Got it.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm joined by Eric Richardson, who's our Deputy Chief Fleet Management Officer in the city. On behalf of Mayor Adams and our Commissioner Don Pinnock, it's always great to get a chance to share what we're doing in New York City. I wish I could have come out there, but you know, it's a long drive out and even longer drive back, and it's a busy time as we transition to a new administration. So I know I have about 25 minutes. I'm going to focus my comments on our Vision Zero and safety and risk initiative. But we are also doing a lot on electric vehicle adoption. So I might try and steal a few minutes and tell you a little bit about that. And I saw, Kevin Wood, your video about your new charge point charger that you're putting out. So I like that a lot. New York City fleet is the largest municipal fleet in the US. I mean, we are core emergency services for the police department, the fire department, the Department of Sanitation. We operate 24 hours a day supporting emergency responders and basically helping to keep the city clean and safe. We operate 170 different types of vehicles, and they're just quick on the breakdown by the agencies. Of course, the police department is our largest fleet, and the sanitation comes in close behind. As was mentioned, we have a large staff. So we have 1,450 servicing staff, mechanics, supervisor mechanics, service workers, body shop, as part of about 2,000 staff who are full-time in fleet services in the city. And then I'm not going to focus too much, but just in the numbers, we're a large operation, as you can imagine, supporting a fleet that is so integral to what happens every day in the city. And they're all big numbers because New York City does things in a large way. We support the largest police department, fire department, parks department, Department of Transportation, and environmental protection department in the world, right? So these core services that all of us do and rely on, we just do them in larger scale. This is what we call the Fleet Federation, our interagency fleet meeting, and it's the kind of core of how we manage these very large, important organizations that like to do their own thing sometimes. Okay, so mainly I want to talk about our Vision Zero and safety initiatives. I'm going to send you this presentation. I'll point you this link. There's a really nice recent write-up at this link about what I'm going to discuss. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go on that link. All right, so risk and safety, a really big issue for us. Starting 2014, Vision Zero was launched in New York City. This was something that had been done successfully in Europe and Sweden, that is really now taking off all over the United States. And cities large and small throughout the United States are adopting Vision Zero as an umbrella strategy to improve safety on the streets for pedestrians, for drivers, for bicyclists. As you know, obviously safety is the #1 issue, but also you can potentially save some money. You know, in our situation, we spend over $150 million a year tied just to personal injury litigation, tied just to our fleet. And in truth, it's a lot more because the 150 is just the claims and litigation. It's not the workers' comp and the property damage, even though the vehicle damage is a minor part, but a huge safety issue and a huge financial issue. So the fleet program has been part of this interagency Vision Zero task force that's now in its 9th year and continuing under Mayor Adams and our DOT Commissioner Udonis Rodriguez, who was when he was at the City Council, was a big leader of Vision Zero from the legislative side and is now on the executive side leading our Department of Transportation. There are a lot of major aspects of this: street redesign by DOT, enforcement by the police department, health monitoring by the Department of Health, the work that the district attorneys do, and then the work that the fleets do. And there are 2 fleet programs, the taxi and limousine program in Vision Zero, and then the city fleet program. And part of what we're trying to do is not just lead on the 30,000 vehicles, but push safety to our partner organizations, other public fleets, nonprofit fleets, but especially private fleets. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So 4 main things we're trying to do: improve the design, change the design of fleet vehicles, just as DOT in New York City is trying to change the design of the streets, right? So they're trying to redesign the streets with calming mechanisms, with bikeways, with redesign of dangerous intersections, with changes in how the speed limits are administered. We're trying to change the vehicles themselves and complement the design, changing the design of the streets with changing the vehicles. I'm going to talk about that. Obviously, we want to change driving behaviors. In the end, safety comes down to the driver out on the road and what they're doing, and are they paying attention, and are they taking it seriously? We are very data focused, and Eric manages our data management program. But to give you just one thing, I'll talk a little bit more about it. We run the largest live tracking program for public vehicles in the United States. We're currently tracking over 36,000 vehicles, including the New York City's 10,000 plus school buses that are actually not part of the city fleet. That's a contracted fleet, but it's part of our city management. So we are very involved with the school buses, even though it's not part of that 30. And then partly why we're here today, partnering far and wide, right? The more groups and towns and cities that are and fleets that are participating in this effort, the more change we can make. All right, so we've partnered with the United States Department of Transportation, a group called the Volpe Center, which is the think tank at USDOT, to do what's called the Safe Fleet Transition Plan. And this is an online set of reports and documents, which we can share with you all. Basically, safety is complicated and risk is complicated. We operate, again, 160 types of vehicles, something of everything, right? From class 1 through 8 to off-road, to emergency to non-emergency. Literally, we have tanks, we have puppet mobiles, and everything in between. So it's hard for one fleet, even our size, to have the pulse of safety, the pulse of risk, to know what technologies work and don't work, what's a good investment and what's a waste of money. So we've partnered with USDOT to kind of study these implementations. We've already implemented over 65,000 safety improvements, but we broke it down, and this is all something we can share, into tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 are safety investments that we believe are worth the investment, that we should mandate, that makes sense, and that we should require wherever we can get them. Things like automatic braking for light duty vehicles, telematics themselves, backup cameras, all implementations that we think, driver alert systems, that we think make sense, pay for themselves, and improve safety. We then have what we call tier 2, best practices, but we're not ready to mandate them, but we are adopting them in certain areas. So I'll give you car cameras, right? In New York City, you might know all police officers now have body cams. They're all filming at all times. We're taking that early journey as to whether the cars should all have cameras. And we've launched some initiatives, mostly in law enforcement, to start putting cameras on cars, but we haven't mandated it. Then there are exploratory technologies, things that we would like to see happen that we're testing, but they're not ready for prime time. One is automatic braking for trucks. So automatic braking, which really goes to, rear end collisions, major safety issue, is kind of there as a technology for light duty. It really isn't yet for heavy duty. We want it to be, but it isn't there yet. One other is intelligent speed assist. We have the technology now to make our cars not speed, right? The cars can, you're probably familiar with the old speed governors. Those speed governors can now be tied to GPS, to tracking of speeds as you move through the roads, to integrated maps of the speed limits, so that the car itself could not be allowed to speed, right? It could, if you're starting to speed up, the car could shake you a little bit, the brake could start to vibrate, or it could just start to slow you down if you're not responding. So this is something that's really getting traction in Europe. We're not seeing a lot of it yet here, and we're trying to change that. So this is kind of our comprehensive approach. We can share this, but we're trying to do is move toward a safer and cost-effective design of vehicles. And tier 1, we think pays for itself. Tier 2 and 3 are what we're looking at for the future. This is just kind of a graphic of all the things we're implementing: automatic lights, backup alarms, safety lights, driver alerts, automatic braking. I'll talk a little bit more about connected vehicles. I'll talk a little bit more about heated mirrors, kind of simple issue for bad weather, but as I'll show you in a second, bad weather is one of the major periods when we have collisions. I'm sure it's no surprise. All right, a couple projects you might not have heard of, and I want to tell you about. Side guards, right? So if you see a truck going through, where you are, chances are there is a gap between the two wheels, between the front and the back wheel. If you go to Europe, if you go to South America, that gap has been taken up by a guard called a side guard, very simple engineering, so that nobody can get caught. A pedestrian, a child, a bicyclist cannot get caught in the back wheel. We know that about 6 to 8% of all fatalities in the city involve that very event. And it kind of makes sense. When you bring a big truck, it's one thing to be on the interstate. When you bring a big truck into New York City, you can't help but overhang the curb when you take a right-hand turn or even a left-hand turn. The trucks are too big. And we know there's a certain number of people who get caught and killed. So this is well-known technology, but in Europe, and standard, right? If you're a big manufacturer of trucks in Europe, you've been putting these guards on vehicles for 20 plus years, you don't think about it. When you sell the same truck in the United States, you take them off. Why? No good reason. And so we're trying to change that. So we've been leading an effort that's been getting a lot of traction. There is in fact now bipartisan national law, pending law to try and make this a mandate. So basic safety mechanism called the truck side guard. And we've almost done the whole city fleet. We're moving up with the commercial waste fleet is putting them on here, our contractors. All right, going more into trucks, surround cameras, right? So, one of the biggest issues for truck driving, which is very, very tough to do, is visual impairment. If you're driving a truck and you're a normal heighted individual, you probably cannot see the ground in front of you for 25 to 30 feet. So if you're driving a conventionally designed cab, one thing you can do, and that we're trying to put in all our trucks now, is surround cameras, so you can see all around the vehicles. And I don't have the time, but I'm going to send you this. You want to see a link? So some of what New York One did with Eric on this, you can see a little bit more about what we're trying to do. There's an even better way to address visual impairment for trucks. Go to a high vision truck. So most trucks that are operated in the United States are conventional cab trucks. The engine, the trainee is in front of the driver, right? That's what that little picture is on the left. It doesn't have to be that way. You can design a truck, often referred to as a cab over. Now we refer to it as high vision because they're a lot better, their designs than just cab over, but where the engine trainee is underneath. And so the driver does not have this heavy visual impairment. Out on an interstate highway, you might not care. When you come into a busy place like New York City, I hope you all spend a lot of time in New York City and come visit us, but we are a crowded, dense place. And when you're operating a truck and you can't see in front of you for 25 feet, that's not a good recipe. Few basic examples. Conventional school bus, right? And school buses, all they're doing is moving kids, right? 25 feet, 30 feet, you can't see the ground. Here's a high vision school bus. I happened to see that on the Upper East Side near my apartment just a couple weeks ago, right? Nothing special, just a totally different design, but completely safer. Same thing you might see, this is a recent garbage truck. There was just an article about it, one of the private waste companies brought it in, right? Really nice sight lines. There's no reason that trucks can't be designed this way. If you go on the interstate, you can drive a high vision truck, there's no problem. But if you come into the city, it's a lot safer. I mentioned a little bit about intelligent speed assist. This is really one that we're trying to push and develop. We know that speeding is one of the single biggest causes. It's the single biggest cause along with distraction, but often distraction leads to speeding, of fatalities and injuries. And we know fatalities and injuries are going up in the United States, especially since COVID, right? Intelligent speed assist could help universally reduce those risks, right? If you don't slow the car down, the car starts to slow itself down. And again, this is technology that's taking off in other parts of the world. We need to adopt it here. Some other things I'll talk about that we're doing fairly quickly. We're doing a lot of training. New York Post had its own commentary about our training, but I kind of liked it, the scared straight kind of stuff. But we're doing a lot of training. All our drivers go through all-day training about safe practices, and we share what really goes on, some of the really, horrible events that take place with city vehicles. We've done a lot of videos, and again, we're going to send this to you in the sake of time, but we've done some videos especially focused on truck driving in the city, how to make it safer, what are the things for truck drivers to be alert to, how to stay patient. There's a really powerful video if you want to remember why safety matters, why doing everything possible if you're managing fleets or involved in the transport industry, why it really matters to prioritize safety. Check out this video. It's very powerful. It brings it down to the families who are impacted. And some of the events here actually involve city fleet vehicles, others involve private vehicles, but a reminder about how important vehicle safety is and how lives can be changed very quickly. One thing we encourage you all to do, and it's part of the Vision Zero mantra, is not to refer to crashes and collisions as accidents. Accidents refer to, the very word accident kind of suggests, well, these things just happen. There's no biggie. It's just an accident, right? No fault. Most collisions have a fault, not all, but most do. In most cases, the collisions are the cause of driving behavior that shouldn't have happened. There are certainly some collisions that are part of difficult driving situations and turns and intersections. I'm a driver. It's not easy to do, but most collisions are preventable and most collisions never should have happened. And so part of the mantra of Vision Zero is refer to them as crashes and collisions. Don't pretend they're all just accidents and no one's to blame. We're trying to do things to, as we look to address collisions, we do want to try and recognize people. So we've done some awards and other things. I do want to mention one of the awards that we launched, which is a national award, is with Together for Safer Roads, a partner of ours. And it's on honor of Lennon Fierro, who was our fleet safety director in New York City, a Navy veteran of 10 years, a dad of 2. He's one of the first city employees to actually lose his life in service to the city in COVID-19, exactly 2 years ago, almost 2 years to this day, actually. That's just Lennon doing a lot of our training. So we kind of, the many things we're dealing with on safety impacted COVID impacted us very, very quickly and tragically. We're doing a lot on telematics, and this is one of the, I'm going to show you a few other slides, but it's a really interesting one. Speed, as I mentioned, the biggest risk. We put telematics on all the city vehicles. We have cut excessive speeding in more than half, down in more than half. Right, so there shouldn't be any excessive speeding. I'll agree with you on that, but we've made enormous progress in tracking the vehicles and cutting that speeding bar. If you see where it was in January of 19, you see where it is now. It is more than 50% down. I will say, just as happened all over the country, and it's been reported widely, unsafe driving behavior during the initial aspects of COVID grew dramatically in our fleet, as it did everywhere else, right? COVID set off all kinds of challenging dynamics. One of them, which has been reported all over the country, is unsafe driving behavior. A lot of that we're still dealing with, like the fatality rate has not returned back. It's still higher, but we have made some progress in recovery. We also do a lot of other things. So seatbelts, I'll admit, we still stink at seatbelts. It's kind of amazing now that we track it. I can tell everybody you're not wearing seatbelt instantaneously. I can't necessarily get people to wear seatbelts. So we've actually made more progress getting people to slow down than we have to click their seatbelt, which makes no sense to me, but it's a challenge. One thing I want to mention that we're doing on distraction, I'm just checking the time, I'm trying to move quickly. We have barred, and we have a report online, we can share that with you. We have barred hands-free vehicle operation for drivers, right? So in New York State, you can't text and you can't use a cell phone, right? But you can do this. I could do, and perfectly legal, if I told you that I'd like you to hold for a few minutes, I'm going to go in my car, put this on speakerphone, and I'm going to continue this talk while I drive through the city, right? That would be perfectly legal for me to do and incredibly dangerous. Right? You can't concentrate on two things, but it's legal. So we actually took a look at the whole question of who says that it's safe to do hands-free driving. The distraction is the issue, and we barred it among our drivers, so we're happy to share a report on that. We developed crash tracking. We needed to make sure we understood why we were getting into our collisions. We do that through our fleet management system, and there's a slide on that and a case study that I'll share with you. Two biggest things we found: one, rear-ending. more collisions caused by rear ending than where our drivers hit the person in front, and more money, because like it's $150 million. We're probably spending $75 million or so a year just because we smash cars in front of us. The most preventable type of collision, right? It's called the 3-second rule. We also, of course, find, which is, common sense, storms are our biggest risk, right? So if you look at that chart on the right, one storm, the crashes go up extraordinarily. We, of course, have to operate during storms. We have emergency services. We're plowing the streets. So some of those risks are not completely avoidable for us. This is the case study I referred to. And there's a link to it if you're interested. Some of our crash tracking: ambulances, collection trucks are our biggest crash risks. We are an emergency services provider. I'm going to go through really quickly because I'm going to run out of time and I want to talk about our telematics a little bit. But we have made a lot of progress. All these things we're trying to do in safety. We've reduced fatal events dramatically. We have reduced bicyclist and pedestrian events pretty substantially. We've reduced basic crashes, especially those involving injuries, which is our real focus. There are dings and dents, but our main focus is to prevent injury. So we've made a lot of progress with what I'm talking to you about. So I do want to, in my few minutes left, I want to focus a little bit on what do we do on telematics. I think it's interesting and something you might want to think about adopting. Like I said, we have what we call the FORT, the Fleet Office of Real-Time Tracking. We have essentially a command center for vehicles now. It's here in the municipal building, which is over at City Hall in New York City. We are tracking 23,500 units through the FORT. And then there are another about 11,000 units, mostly the police department, that are also live tracked, but we do not manage that data here. He doesn't share their vehicle data with us, but we are in fact tracking them. And here's just a fun picture of if you want to know where the New York City fleet is in New York City, it's everywhere, right? This was just a fun snapshot of where our fleet is at any one time. And it's pretty much here every street in New York. We do a lot of reporting through telematics, daily reports, speed reports. You can do these geofences, so you can monitor where a vehicle is. And if you're not supposed to leave the borough of Brooklyn, the second you leave the borough of Brooklyn, everybody's getting emails and saying, hey, FYI, this vehicle just took off. This vehicle's in Queens now, and I don't think it's supposed to. We get live crash reports. So as opposed to the traditional model of, someone gets into a crash and you're waiting to, fleet operators waiting to get a report and waiting for paperwork. If there's a crash, we get an instant email that it happens with an initial report based on the telematics. This is an initial report. This crash actually was a fatal crash of a truck driver with a police officer who was off duty. But you're getting instantaneous crash reporting, ability to manage these kind of things in a way we've never had before. I've talked about a lot of other safety reporting, hard braking, hard accelerating, speeding, seatbelts, pretty much anything that's going on with the cars, and then you can try to manage that information down. Another thing that's kind of very timely, since you all may be experiencing the same, there's a lot of theft going on of vehicles and equipment right now. We just actually found a video of a team of 3 in a U-Haul and we happen to have the video that just came into the Olmsted Center in the Parks Department in the middle of the night and came in a very organized fashion and literally was removing the vehicles and towing them up with a couple metal little tow supports and putting them in the U-Haul truck and driving them away. And we happen to get it. We haven't caught them yet, but we got it perfectly on video. But one thing about telematics is that you have a better chance of tracking down thefts. And we've actually recovered a lot of vehicles in the last 2 years, thanks to telematics. This story happened to be covered by the Daily News, but truth is we've been recovering vehicles left and right now that we're kind of tracking them, and most thieves do not know that. All right, so really quickly, we are doing a lot to kind of partner with others. I'm not going to go through all of this for the sake of time, but we actually have an executive order that asks us to kind of do what's called the fleets of the future and push safety with other fleets. And so we're doing a lot of different stuff from forums, which we can invite you to. We're actually talking to our drivers and doing these customer surveys to try and find out more what the drivers think we should prioritize in. We've surveyed, actually 44 is low now. We've surveyed over 60,000 vehicle operators. We partner with our city controller who manages claims here, with our law department who are involved in litigations and claims, with our Office of Management Budget. We've been partnering with Together for Safer Roads, which is an international safety organization. And we have this kind of global leadership for fleets, which actually is targeted, and maybe some of you all could think about joining us. It's targeted for medium-sized fleets that may want to develop a safety strategy and not be sure where the best way to start it. So we have partnered with TSR to kind of help guide medium-sized and other fleets that maybe could benefit from some of the things that we've been doing. We've put out some videos. I'll send you these links if you're bored and want to hear more from me. I was much younger then and had slightly more hair than I do now. Couple other things, and then I'm gonna stop and see if there are questions. One other thing that should all help us with is we're trying to change how vehicles are sold in the United States. Most vehicles, if you go to buy a vehicle, retail or commercial government fleet, and you want the highest level of safety for that vehicle, you have to buy with the highest level of luxury, right? You have to get the highest level of, the high level trim, right? So we actually have an all electric vehicle that we really like that's got great safety, but we can't buy it unless the manufacturer, whose name I won't mention, but you all know the name, forces us to buy about $5,000 of luxury stuff, right? We got to get the sunroof, we got to get the leather seats, we got to get the entertainment package if we want automatic braking and driver alert. It shouldn't be that way. It's done for reasons, but one of the things we're trying to campaign on is pressuring manufacturers to have safety packages that are separate from luxury packages. So if you want the top level of safety for your vehicle, you don't have to buy all kinds of stuff you don't want. Last thing, I will just invite you to, first off, thank you for listening in. And we do a public show. It's a lot of fun on May 26th over in Flushing Meadow Park at right in front of the Unisphere, where the US Open is. We've been doing it for 33 years. I've been managing it for about 25, 26 of them. We have all kinds of displays of vehicles, and there's food and fun and speeches. And so if you're looking for a fun day out in the park and to talk vehicles, especially sustainable vehicles and safe vehicles, please join us. So that's kind of my presentation. I do have some other stuff on electric equipment, which I can do another time or talk a little bit about. But let me stop here and thank you again and see if there are any questions I can respond to.
Checking for questions, Keith.
Yeah.
Any questions for New York City Fleet? Again, I will have this running again for us all. There must be one question. Kendra has a question.
I do. What kind of fleet management system do they use for tracking vehicles, maintenance, all that?
So the question is, and it's probably proprietary, but maybe not. What kind of fleet management system does New York City use, right, to manage vehicles and whatnot?
So our system of record is NYC Fleet Focus by AssetWorks, and that's the system that's used to track the fleet assets for the mechanical work, all the work orders, the auto parts, the inspections, the warranties. We also have developed, and it's part of what that case study that I'm going to send you this is, we also developed a crash module through that. So the original product did not track crashes in any special way. So we actually developed and paid for a crash module, which I'm sure they sell to everybody now. And that's the core one. Then it's a company called Geotab that is our telematics supplier. So the telematics is a separate company called Geotab, which is, I believe, the largest telematics provider out there these days.
Very good. We actually have a bus tour, so I'm going to end it here and say thank you very much. We will rerun this fine presentation. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate it. You are our last speaker here at the Spring Lunch and Learn in Port Jefferson. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Someday I'll hopefully get out there and get your lunch, and appreciate your inviting us.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too.